Hi, students. We are starting World War II today. We've been talking so far about the causes of World War II, which we're going to briefly review today. So let's go ahead and get started. So remember that we learned last week that after World War I, many nations were struggling to rebuild. This is a map of Europe in post-World War I, and you can see where the borders are. They're going to change after World War II. As you remember, the Treaty of Versailles created bitterness among many nations. Germany was especially upset because they lost a lot of their property and their territories and resources, and they had to pay a large amount of money to other European nations, which they could not afford. We also learned that a global depression in the 1930s led to high unemployment and a sense of desperation in Europe. Because of this economic desperation, more and more citizens turned to strong totalitarian dictators to rule their nations. These totalitarian dictators aggressively took land and resources from other countries. This led to World War II. So we had Hitler in Germany, we had Emperor Hirohito in Japan, Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union, and Mussolini in Italy. Now, remember that totalitarian leaders are dictators who control all aspects of government and the lives of their citizens. Totalitarian leaders gained support by promising jobs, promoting nationalism, and using propaganda. And dictators held on to their power by using censorship, secret police, denying liberties, and eliminating opposing rivals or political parties. We learned about how Joseph Stalin killed all those people in Russia, and we're going to learn more about how Hitler and Mussolini did the same thing. We talked about the rise of nationalism in 1922 through 1941. And we're going to learn more about Adolf Hitler. We already learned he offered economic stability to unemployed Germans during the Great Depression. He becomes the chancellor in 1933 and really leads the world into war. He's the one who causes the war by invading Poland. Joseph Stalin, he grabs control of the Soviet Union in 1924, and he just crushes all opposition. We talked a little bit about Benito Mussolini. He's also very much involved in World War II. He rises to power in 1922 and attempts to restore Italy to its former position as a world power. Hideki Tojo, the force behind Japanese strategy, so here's Japan over here, they were very imperialistic and trying to take over all of Asia. So it's important to remember that fascist governments were controlled by dictators who demanded loyalty from the citizens. They did not offer democracy and used one political party to rule the entire nation. But unlike communists, fascists believe people should keep their property. So we have these characteristics of fascism. We've seen that before with Mr. Karp's classroom. I'm not going to read that again to you, but it's just important to remember that there are certain characteristics of fascism. The last thing we're going to talk about before we start our reading is Adolf Hitler. So you can see here a vision of hell. It says, a vision of hell, a boy walks amid the corpses at Belsen concentration camp on its liberation in April 1945. So here's a little boy walking. He's walking past all the bodies of his fellow Jewish citizens. And here's Adolf Hitler, and this is the book he wrote, Mein Kampf. And in that book, he wrote that Germans were members of a master race called Aryans. And all non-Aryans, they believed that all non-Aryans were inferior subhumans. Very racist belief. And it was this racist belief that led Germany to murder 6 million Jews in the Holocaust of World War II. So here's just one of the concentration camps. We're going to learn more about this horrible genocide called the Holocaust in the next 2 weeks. So now students, I want you to open up your document. Vas a abrir el documento that's called World War II Timeline Lesson. And I give a translated version, traducido en español, Cronología de la Segunda Guerra Mundial. And you're going to read the text here, look at the pictures, and then you're going to answer the questions by just typing in your answer. You can pull the answers right from the text, or you can summarize them. Si lees el documento, puedes contestar las preguntas aquí, typeando aquí, o puedes sacarlo del texto, ¿ok? Pero quiero que ustedes hacen su propio trabajo. And make sure that you're reading through the timeline then. There's two parts to this. There's questions 1 and 2, and then there's questions 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hay preguntas 1 y 2, y ya tienes que leer el timeline aquí, y preguntas 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 y 9, ¿ok? Y eso es lo que van a hacer por el jueves, ¿ok? Entonces, vamos a empezar con la Segunda Guerra Mundial, and we learned that World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history. There were like 50 to 85 million people lost their lives. Y en español lo voy a decir también que aprendimos que la Segunda Guerra Mundial fue el conflicto más mortal en la historia humana, con la pérdida de aproximadamente 50 a 85 millones de vidas. So let's start World War II, and I miss you all so much, and I hope you understand everything you're reading. If you have questions, ask me. Thank you.